Hey guys, how's it going? Eli here, back with another video where today we're going to be having a conversation about my top reasons, or specifically I should say top things to look for when just seeing longevity and growth within certain specific sealed products, booster boxes, elite trainer boxes, so on and so forth, and just the reasoning behind why certain items and certain sets will outperform others. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So I actually want to kind of get this out of the way for those people that are wondering, why the frick does Eli have this ugly looking mustache on his face? I don't know why I'm bringing this up. I just had to do 3 takes because I couldn't take myself seriously. I just got back from a volleyball tournament, for those people that didn't know, and that was kind of the team uniform. So I grew a mustache and just kind of grew my facial hair out to look like an absolute goober. So I will be keeping this until Tuesday, and then once I'm done with the stream, I am, Lord forgive me, shaving it, because oh my goodness gracious, I look so ridiculous now recording myself and looking at this. But but one thing, of course, I want to always get out of the way. It is Monday. It is weekly pack giveaway day. So without further ado, as far as people who are wondering how you get into the weekly giveaways, all you have to do to enter is be subscribed to the YouTube channel, leave a like, comment down below. We post videos each and every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So of course, multiple ways to enter. And then we also have 3 winners. And so each winner gets a Brilliant Star pack. So 3 ways to win, 3 ways to enter. And then once we hit 2,500 subs, those packs go from 8 to 12 per person. So getting really close. But now the announcement for who the winners are, drumroll as always. The 3 people are David Madrid, Tyrone Smith, and then Lord Narwhal. Shout out to you 3. Shout out to Lord Narwhal. He's one of the regulars on the stream. So, but yeah, as far as it goes, as always, if you want to redeem your kind of weekly packs that you just won, shoot me an email, shoot me a message on Discord, ping me. If you want to go Instagram, you can do that too, but I would say I'm most responsive on Discord. Yeah, just shoot me over your information with some form of proof, usually just a screenshot of, you know, showing that you've logged in or something like that. Usually is the best way to verify that it is truly you. But now jumping into the overall topic for today. So in a lot of my most recent videos, and by recent I mean within the past couple weeks, within the past month, I've really been kind of discussing which items are the best to kind of invest in. Obviously, I've talked about elite trainer boxes being better than booster boxes. I've talked about, you know, what makes a booster box kind of, you know, not as good of an investment. And I've really went into the intricacies and we've looked over time. But now we haven't really looked into what sets specifically perform better and why. You know, obviously we can take a look and see, you know, what sets are the most expensive nowadays in the Sword and Shield era. But if we go back to Sun and Moon, if we go back to XY, if we go back to, you know, sets earlier than that, we really want to take a look and see, okay, why did certain sets perform better now than they did before? Or why did, you know, a lot of certain sets not perform super strong currently, but performed really strong back then? And so we're just going to really analyze all just the intricacies of understanding, you know, the top things to kind of look for when determining, you know, what specifically makes a set perform well over time. And this is really going to translate to an argument that I've made on why I think certain sets in the current, you know, ultra modern state are going to perform better than what people think. And so the first thing we're going to kind of look at is we're going to look at the Sun and Moon era, and we're going to look at 3 specific booster boxes. And I'm going to break it down as to specifically some of the rules I have in regards to determining why sets are going to perform better than others. So the 3 items that we're going to be looking at, or the 3 booster box sets, is Cosmic Eclipse, Burning Shadows, and then Forbidden Light. So the reason why I specifically picked these 3 is because honestly a lot of them are going to correlate to a rule of, you know, a couple of different rules that we're really going to go over. And so the first rule that we're going to be going over is, generally speaking, when it comes to looking at booster boxes, a lot of the times people like booster boxes that have a lot of main pulls. And so what do I mean by main pulls? That doesn't necessarily mean that when you see a set, you're like, oh, look, rainbow, 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 right? Because you say to yourself, okay, well, if you're saying these are a bunch of main pulls, then why is it that Forbidden Lights didn't perform as well as Burning Shadows or Cosmic Eclipse, right? When I say kind of main pulls, What I mean by that is there's a bunch of main desired cards. There's a reason why the set, and we'll go into it as well, Evolving Skies, has performed so well, and a reason why a set such as Cosmic Eclipse has performed extremely well. Because there are so many cards that are desirable in a set. Not just the fact of the matter that they're, shiny cardboard and they're an alternate art, or, they are, a rainbow. Like, it really comes down to what is the content of the card itself. And the thing that makes Cosmic Eclipse so great is it really does fan service to a lot of the generations. Obviously, you have the tag team cards, which the tag team era was a very popular era. There's an argument to be made as well that it was not the most heavily printed era, so that also is going to play a factor, but we'll get into that into a later part of the video. But Cosmic Eclipse obviously was supposed to get a reprint, ended up getting canceled, and with it, the booster box prices, of course, went up, not only just because of that, but also because the demand for the set itself was so high. You obviously had cards such as Charizard, everyone's fan favorite. You've got Arceus, Dialga, Palkia. You've got a lot of really cool full art trainers people enjoy. You've got your Blastoise, you've got your Venusaur, you've got a lot of these amazing alternate arts. You've got a lot of these amazing rainbow rares. And then, of course, even going all the way down, you've got your character rares as well that a lot of people desired. I mean, the Piplup. So it really did do a great fan service to all different types of generations. And the artwork in the set in and of itself was just beautifully done, There are just so many great, cool pulls that you could get during this set and during this kind of generation in the tag team era, which is why a lot of them perform really well, but we're kind of taking a look at Cosmic Eclipse. If we want to, we can take a look at Unified Minds and really make a different argument for that, because Unified Minds booster boxes are up to $330, and they literally got a small reprint that brought the price down to $120 back in 2020. Or actually, no, I think it was 2021. I always forget this, get it mixed up. But sometime basically during COVID, it did get a reprint, caused the prices to go down. And within literally, 6 months after the reprint happened, the price is already back up to like, $300 plus. So it just climbed. And so it was just, the demand is extremely high for it. So having a set that has really high pull rates, and that's the thing, we talk about this a lot on stream because people are like, Eli, Forbidden Lights, it's such an undervalued set. And don't get me wrong, like, I love Forbidden Lights. I think, personally speaking, for myself, it's a great set, but it's a great set for my own personal reasons. I'm someone who's a Gen 4 fan. I love Dialga, I love Palkia, I love Lucario. For those people that like Gen 5, obviously, Greninja is one of the fan favorites, especially when talking about starters. So it's one of these things where it's like, it's got some cards that people do enjoy, but when you think of big hitter cards, there's not a lot of people in this market that are like, oh, I want that Dialga, I want that Palkia, I want that Lucario. These are not just big hitter cards. And typically speaking, when looking at big hitter cards, you would say, most commonly speaking, that unless there's some specific art design that people can really kind of get on board with as a beautiful art design, it usually comes down to Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3 are the top performing cards specifically. When you're taking a look at what carries a lot of, certain sets. And we'll go into that as well. But, main thing really to consider is just what kind of sets perform really well are the ones that have a lot of large pulls. I mean, you take a look at Evolving Skies, for example. I mean, we're going to go all over the places with some of the booster boxes and eras I'm going to be showing you, but you've got the Umbreon, you've got the Rayquaza, you've got the Leafeon, you've got the Glaceon, you've got the Sylveon, and these are all fan favorite cards. And so that's the thing, is when talking about main pulls, you're saying to yourself, okay, what makes it different? Not only that it's, one of these sets that has a bunch of pulls, well, it's the pulls of the cards that are the most desirable that people truly enjoy. So, and now we're going to take a discussion and lead into, okay, so then what are these, fan favorite pulls? What is your kind of rule for that, Eli, when you're talking about what you can usually predict for what is going to be a set that's going to perform well long term, because this is the cards that people like to desire? I would say you have generally 4 specific rules, or 4 specific kind of cards, I should say, when talking about which ones perform the best. Gen 1, historically speaking, always knocked it out of the park. You're talking Gengar sets, you're talking Charizard sets, you're talking, sets that have the original Eevees. That's one that's performed well. Number 2, you're talking about EV sets. Literally, it could be Leafeon, it could be Glaceon, it could be Sylveon. If a set has any of those cards, they perform super duper strong, like historically speaking. You take a look at some of the most expensive sets, say like in the Diamond and Pearl era. Diamond and Pearl, the top most expensive sets, number 1 being Stormfront. The main pull card in that is a Charizard. And then if I'm correct, the second most expensive booster box in that set, or era, I should say, is Majestic Dawn. Majestic Dawn is centered around Leafeon and Glaceon, and at the time, Leafeon and Glaceon were not everyone's fan favorite, but guess what? It's an EV set, and a lot of the cards as well within that set, they have holos for Espeon, they have holos for Umbreon, so they have all those kind of EV type cards within the booster box, and so it historically performed well, a lot better over time. So that's kind of your second thing. The third one is, inherently obvious. It's Charizard. You take a look at literally Charizard. Like, there's a reason why there's a rule called the Charizard Tax. And you can, if you want to lump it into Gen 1, but in my personal opinion, it gets a category of its own because it performs extremely strong. It is a set that, or when sets have Charizards, they just perform well. You could say the set sucks in and of itself. Look at Champion's Path, for example. Perfect example. Set absolutely is atrocious, terrible set, but you've got the Charizards in it. And so the packs themselves are going to perform really well over time. And we'll look into a perfect example of that as well with some Sun and Moon era booster boxes. And then the next one we're going to talk about, when I say Gen 2 specifically, because I said Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, a lot of the sets specifically, I'm talking mainly about Lugia. Lugia has also been a set that's performed really well. You take a look at Lost Thunder historically. It was one of the best performing Sun and Moon era booster boxes that didn't get Tag Team. Obviously, Tag Team performed better because a lot of people like the artwork. And then you also take a look at a set like Neo Genesis. Neo Genesis was a very strong performing set, obviously because it does have that Lugia, and even, it's part of the Neo era and it didn't have Shinings, but it still performed really well. And then the kind of last one, when taking a look at just certain cards to kind of collect, Rayquaza. Rayquaza is another one of those cards where historically you take a look at sets such as, once again, Celestial Storm. You take a look at Evolving Skies. You take a look at some other sets that do have it, kind of like EX Deoxys, Dragon Frontiers, that are Rayquaza and, Charizard sets, or a Mew set. Like, these are sets that have those main series cards that a lot of people really enjoy. And so that is kind of what you're talking about when looking at, okay, which cards specifically are the chase cards that a lot of people like to pull. And now for some people who have been in this hobby for a while, you might say to yourself, Eli, like, this feels like, I already know this information. But a lot of people that are new to the hobby, a lot of people that are new to the concept of investing, or a lot of people that just don't understand the history of kind of looking at the analytics of investing, and might say to themselves, I think a set like, Chilling Reign is a better set than Fusion Strike. Well, there's an argument to be made that historically speaking, it's not going to perform as well as something like a Fusion Strike, which has a Gengar, which has a Mew in it, and we can take a look at sets and really compare that. But going back to what I was saying with Sun and Moon, you take a set like Forbidden Light, right? And there's an argument to be made that there's quote unquote more pulls because the rainbows that people find desirable. You take a look at Burning Shadows booster boxes compared to Forbidden Light, and granted, Burning Shadows also had a very late reprint that ended up causing the prices to go down. There's a reason why there's so many Burning Shadows packs still available when you go to your Walmart, and you see it a lot in stores. But it has that Charizard in it, and sure, you can say, oh, it has these energies, and it has a couple of these like art cards, or sorry, these full art trainer cards, and it has the Darkrai. But ultimately speaking, when you talk about the standalone value of the Charizard compared to everything else, these are not pulls that you're really getting excited about, other than the fact that, like, oh, cool, I got another, shiny energy, right? And then you keep going deeper into the rainbows. A lot of them are just, kind of that Alolan type variants of Pokemon, Ultra Beast, and so on and so forth, which, these cards are still relatively cheap. So when you're saying, what causes, and I mean, look at all the gold cards too and how cheap they are, right? So when you take a look at the Charizard and you say, okay, how has Burning Shadows performed so well, even though it's been, a set that's been printed multiple times, even though it's a set that doesn't really have any main pulls that make it so amazing, it has the Charizard, and that Charizard premium is what makes the set perform so much better than a majority of other sets within the Sun and Moon era pre-tag team. Once you start talking about, you know, the tag team sets, which has more than just the pull of the Charizard, you've got so many other pulls. And then character rares, obviously this is kind of a standalone because character rares are introduced. Artworks are obviously going to play a huge factor as well. That's going to kind of be another point that I'm going to lead into, is artwork designs. That is going to be another thing when taking a look at what people really enjoy. People love character rares. People love alternate arts. But of course, you know, that has to be coupled with something. And what do I mean by it has to be coupled with something? Well, you know, you take a look at a set such as Battle Styles, right? You might say to yourself, Battle Styles was the first set in the Sword and Shield era to bring this new kind of art design to alternate arts. Obviously, alternate arts were technically first revealed during the Sun and Moon era, but there's a different type of alternate art design that we have seen in Sword and Shield that was first introduced in the Battle Styles set. Of course, you say to yourself, well, Battle Styles absolutely tanked. So it has those alternate arts. Why is it as a set not performed really well? Well, because when you think about it, the only alternate art cards that you can make an argument for that are desirable are the Tyranitar and the Empoleon. As far as it goes, most people haven't been too fond of the Urshifu cards. Of course, you might say, well, they're more expensive than the Empoleon. Well, that's because they have their own relevance to the competitive TCG format. So that's going to be kind of my argument against why it is more expensive than a card that is Empoleon that's more desirable. And even then, there's an argument to be made that Empoleon in of itself is not extremely desirable compared to something like a Tyranitar, which does fit into that kind of Gen 2 category that a lot of people really have nostalgia for. You know, kind of like the Houndoom. Houndoom is a card as well. People love the shiny variation of the Houndoom. I've seen a lot of blue shinies are very, you know, popular shinies. You take a look at Houndoom, you know, you take a look at Shiny Mew. That's another card that has been seen as a blue shiny that's been reprinted many, many times before. So you just have different examples when talking about kind of what makes this card also, you know, desirable. But when you're saying to yourself, okay, make an argument 1, 2, maybe 3 polls, and then you take a look at Cosmic, a set like Cosmic, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, there's a full page full of polls. There's no argument to be made as to why Battle Styles should have performed just as strong, even though it introduced those alternate arts. And then you take a look like Evolving Skies that does have, you know, the same artwork, but it has these kind of desirable cards. So that's another thing when taking into consideration is when looking at desirable artworks obviously play a factor, but they don't play as large of a factor as it really comes down to the kind of nostalgia that people have for a card. So like you take a look at like a set such as, you know, let's say like, you know, Celestial Storm, right? Celestial Storm is obviously a set that's a Rayquaza based set, and it did really well. It performed really strong, right? And then you take a look at something like, you know, let's say a, you know, Cosmic Eclipse, a Unified Mind, a Tag Team, obviously taking print, you know, into consideration, of course. You know, those sets, Unbroken Bonds is another example. Those sets still historically performed well and are on pace for the ones that are less than Celestial Storm, because some of them are, of course, valued less. We can take a look at Unbroken Bonds to really kind of confirm this. You know, Unbroken Bonds, booster box price is going for around $409. Celestial Storm, the set in and of itself is going for around $474. So the set itself obviously is performing, you know, better by price value. But considering the fact that Unbroken Bonds literally got a reprint not that long ago, year and a half ago, that really goes to show you the strength of the set in and of itself, because it does have the Charizard, because it does have those Gen 1 cards, because it has the Eevee in the set. Like, it has the tag team desirability, but of course that is only going to take you so far when you say, oh look, it's a tag team card, people love tag teams. Why is it only worth, you know, $13, $17? Well, it's because it's not as super desirable as, say, some of these other tag team cards that have the Charizard, that have the Sylveon. Like, there are certain specific cards that will perform stronger when you're talking about the overall card design in which they are, and coupling it with the overall general card that it is being designed for. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's another thing you have to kind of take into consideration. So the main 3 things we've talked about is talking about 1, obviously, what are the main pulls? 2, what are the characters when talking about what defines a main pull, and then 3, how there is going to be a factoring into art design, but it's not going to be one of the things that is going to be the kind of main outlier when talking about, it's going to really just carry a set, because it really comes down to the characters and the amount of pulls. Those are going to be the most important. I would say in order from most important to least important from the things we've listed so far. So I would say characters number 1, number 2 is the amount of pulls, and then number 3 is the art design. And the reason why I say characters number 1 is specifically when talking about the Charizard will carry a set. Of course, there's an argument to be made if you're talking about a Mew or you're talking about a Gengar, but historically speaking, we'll take a look at a set such as like Phantom Forces, where there is an argument to be made. Okay, look, they're the first set to introduce the silver card. This is where there is that kind of standalone value from an actual art design when looking into kind of making the argument for the main points. Here is that Gengar as well. Once again, one of the fan favorite cards that a lot of people really like from the Gen 1 era. You take a look at this card, which of course, like I said, Dialga is a card that people enjoy, but it's really actually being carried by the artwork. Here's an outlier for the argument that I made prior. Here's a Gengar, which in and of itself, you can say, okay, it's cool. It's got a Mega Gengar design, but there's nothing really that kind of like, stands out to the Gengar design that makes people love it so much. And then you take a look at the other pulls themselves. Nothing to really write home about in regards to pulls. And so this is just another example of how when you're coupling the Gen 1 card and you're coupling a kind of art design, and Dialga, once again, it's like one of those sets that some people like it, some people don't, but the silver and making it the only silver card to ever be made, it really, really makes it stand out. And so that's where you're going to talk about that outlier or that other variable when you're going to say to yourself, okay, why is it, specifically speaking, that in this set, the silver card made so much of a difference when it came to the artwork compared to something like the alternate arts with battle styles. It just comes down to the fact that this was a one-time thing and people really enjoyed the artwork over it. And of course, as well, battle styles is a fairly new set, so we don't know how it's going to perform over time because alternate arts are still very desirable. There's an argument to be made that over time it will still perform really well, comparatively speaking to a set like Rebel Clash, which is, in my opinion, the worst set in the Sword and Shield era, and yet it's still going for around $200. Of course, there's printing that really goes into factor with that, and that's going to bring into our next kind of main point is printing. Printing is going to also play a major factor in regards to if a set is going to be more expensive than not. We saw with Rebel Clash, although that you've seen a lot of the kind of loose packs of Rebel Clash pop up in a lot of items that are still coming out today. You have seen the price of the Rebel Clash booster box still stay really strong. And Rebel Clash, I think I said Rebel Clash or Crash. But if we take a look and we see Rebel Clash, the booster box in and of itself is going for around $200. And yes, of course, it had a little bit of a takeoff, or sorry, not a takeoff, but a little bit of like, a decrease in price, maybe an argument to be made at 5%, nothing crazy. But I mean, this was a set that, was considered to be one of the worst sets, if not the worst set in the Sword and Shield era, right? You take a look and you see Boss's Orders. Kind of cool, but nothing to write home about. And then all these other cards, I mean, yuck, nothing exciting, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, the Ninetales is cool. It's a Ninetales full art, but the art design, coupled with the fact of the matter that it's just a standard full art, it's not going to be able to carry a set, And Ninetales, although it's a Gen 1 card, it's not one of those strong Gen 1 cards, It's not one of the starters. It's not one of the legendaries. It can perform well, but there's different levels in regards to a strength in which a certain card can really carry a set. And I want to make that very clear when talking about Gen 1. Because, if you're saying there's a set, for example, let's make an argument for, there's a set that the main series card's a Tauros. Tauros is not a super, popular, Gen 1 card, right? And so it's not going to be what carries a set. you're talking about the starters, you're talking about the legendary sets with Mew, sets with Mewtwo, sets with Charizard, Blastoise, sets with Gyarados. Like, these are sets that are typically speaking going to stand out, but of course coupling that on with general art designs and having a card like Ninetales, which is relatively popular but nothing crazy, it's not going to be able to carry like a Charizard is able to, because it's not one of these cards that really has that strength to stand alone in value. And so the set in of itself is just very underwhelming set, nothing crazy. Same argument to be made with the Milotic. Milotic, it's a really good fan favorite card for Gen 3, but it's not one of those cards that's going to be able to carry a set. So then you take a look and say to yourself, okay, well, the set kind of blows. It doesn't really have good kind of cards. And so then why is it, for example, Rebel Clash performing so much stronger than comparing to Battle Styles? And Battle Styles has had multiple prints. It had its initial 3 waves, and then it had another reprint. And this was already after the price of the booster box came down to below $100 after wave 3. Went all the way down to like 85, 86, $90. And then it went up to 106 again. And then it crashed all the way down to as low as like $75, I think, in some places, which is insanely cheap. And so the printing has just kind of really just been going at it with Battle Styles, and Rebel Clash really didn't see that high of a print run. And that was because, the Pokemon boom really hadn't started to kind of go in full effect at that time, with Rebel Clash being one of those sets that came out shortly after the pandemic had occurred. And so that's when you started to really see supply chain issues start to come in. And so that's where you can see these sets that are like, wow, this is kind of a terrible set. Like, why is it that the booster box is so much more expensive, but the cards are kind of cheap? And that's one of the reasons why there are some sets like that are going to perform really well. A perfect example of that is Furious Fist. Furious Fist was a set that people did not like. People said, man, Furious Fist sucks. And I mean, you talk about some of the main cards. You've got the Lucario, you've got the Dragonite, which once again, Dragonite, it's a great card. People like Dragonite, but people didn't fall in love with this artwork design with the Dragonite. And there's an argument to be made that Dragonite, historically speaking, isn't going to be able to carry a set. You can see sets like Evolving Skies where Dragonite has a really high value that is able to attain. Let's take a look at Evolving Skies, see some of the top pulling cards. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's the 8th most expensive card, but the reason for that is the art design really is what kind of takes it away and really what carries it. People love that kind of art design of that Dragonite, but even then, the Dragonite is an expensive card within the set, because it is also coupled with a bunch of other cards that make it really grow in value. It doesn't specifically have that standalone value. And another perfect example of this is XY base set. XY base set, it's a set that has the Blastoise, it has the Venusaur, but you take those 2 cards away, what do you have? You've got a bunch of these other cards that really, I mean, the main polls 1, 2, not exciting, not exciting, not exciting, not exciting. There's nothing really in this set that people really get excited about, and that's why XY era specifically really started off with a dud. It really did not see that much, growth until later into, kind of the back end. And it had Flash Fire and it had Phantom Forces. But, other than Flash Fire, people weren't really getting super excited about XY era. It wasn't until Evolutions where you really saw that rekindling. I mean, you had sets like Ancient Origins, which is one of my favorite sets in the XY era. That did not perform super strong. You had other sets such as, Roaring Skies. You had sets such as Primal Clash. I mean, these sets were just sitting and sitting and sitting. Like these 3 specifically were sitting. The only thing that caused them to attain any value was that the competitive standalone value of Primal Clash and Roaring Skies was one that really played a huge factor into the value that you saw from, cards such as the Shaman EX, which I've talked about. It's comparable to the current Crobat V, but they at the time weren't into the idea of taking that card, doing multiple prints of it so it's more accessible in other sets. They kept it in that one set, and so that's what gave it value. But once it got reprinted and it was right before competitive, and then it takes it out of competitive, there's not really a main appeal for that, set. That's why there's an argument that I always make with, Darkness Ablaze. It's getting that reprint right before competitive, but it doesn't really have any competitively viable cards. It has a Charizard, which is going to make it a strong performing set. Same thing goes with Vivid Voltage. Doesn't really have, a strong competitive presence, but it has that Pikachu, which is a very, it's one of those sets that are cards that can carry on top of a new design having to do with amazing rares, and one of those amazing rare cards is a Rayquaza. So it's like all these things really kind of tie in to, once again, the point in which I'm making for the top 4 things I've listed so far. The top 4 things being, of course, character, art design, print, and then lastly speaking, talking about how many pulls there's going to be, how many main, kind of things can you get in the set. So those are kind of the main 4 that we've gone over right now. And then the last item that we're really going to be discussing, and of course we're into 30 minutes, so this is going to kind of be a finish up for the overall top 5. It's time. Time is going to be your kind of biggest thing, because obviously as time happens, even the sets such as Steam Siege that are terrible performing sets, like no one gave a crap about Steam Siege, Crimson Invasion, and I mean we take a look about Crimson Invasion, right? Crimson Invasion, what is in this set that people enjoy? Okay, you've got a Gyarados, kind of cool, and that's it. That is literally it. And Gyarados, although it's a Gen 1 card, and there's a reason why it is the most expensive card in the set, a Rainbow Gyarados is not going to be able to carry. We take a look at a set such as Breakpoint. Breakpoint is a different set in the XY era. Breakpoint had a large amount of product that was sitting for a while, and people did not like Breakpoint initially. But historically, over time, it has started to perform really strong. And you got to ask yourself why. Is there anything about Breakpoint that kind of makes it stand out? It's got a really beautiful art design with this. It's got a Skyla card. It's got other Mega Gyarados. It has one of the EVs. It's a shiny as well, which makes it also extra cool. Other than that, you can say to yourself, okay, that's kind of it. But even then, that right there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, arguably 7 with the Ho-Oh. Cool art design cards, even though the cards themselves are not extremely, expensive cards. And that just comes down to the fact that XY Breakpoint, if I'm correct, came out in 2014, 2013. So it's an older set. And time has really been, generous to it. Because I remember when I first got back, into the hobby, or more specifically, I should say when I first started my business, I was selling XY Breakpoint blister packs for, below $3. And I was struggling to sell them. And that was back in, end of 2020. And Breakpoint booster boxes were still going for around $200. But you've just seen an absolute rapid incline within the past year of the price of it going $330 all the way up to, that kind of $460 price. You can see right now, obviously on Limitless Gaming, it says, it's $599. But let's take a look and see what the real value is, because obviously eBay is going to really show us. Breakpoint booster box. Breakpoint booster box price, when taking a look at actually what it's going for around, that $375, $400 price point. And there's an argument to be made that, wow, it's going for that much, even though the set itself is not extremely desirable. It's because it's been a set that's, been out for some time now. And so sets, even though they're going to be terrible sets, such as, once again, Crimson Invasion, and I don't know why I can't find it anymore, probably because I already was on the Breakpoint page, but they will still perform over time. Well, of course, is not the right word to use, because comparatively speaking, it is still one of the weakest performing sets. But in generally speaking, it doesn't matter, because you're not going to bust on scarcity, because these are deflationary items. There's a reason why I always pick cards over these items, because of course you're going to be able to find specific cards that will perform better than other items, and sometimes there's an argument to be made that some cards will perform better than sealed, but on average sealed will perform better, because you take the worst sealed card, the worst sealed product of like a certain set, and then you take the worst card of a certain set, you compare it 1-to-1, the booster boxes are still going to take priority, because people are going to want to collect the art design of the Elite Trainer box. People are going to want to collect the art design of the booster box. And so time is really kind of your fifth main point when having that discussion about, top 5 things to really take into consideration when looking at what makes certain items perform better other than other items. But kind of wrapping it up and giving the main point of the video, because we've been going for almost 35 minutes. It's one of my longer videos. Hopefully you guys found some benefit to this. But number 1, in order, and this is how I'm going to rank it, in order from top 5, I would say the number 1, probably most important thing is time. I mean, we see sets that are terrible sets. They'll still create a yield or return over time. Number 2, characters. Obviously, there's a ranking into which characters perform better than others, but you take sets that are terrible sets, don't have a ton of main series pulls, and they only have like 1 or 2 crazy pulls. Burning Shadow's perfect example, Charizard. Charizard is going to show you that there's a reason why certain characters will carry the crap out of certain sets. So characters is a very important one. Number 3 is obviously how many pulls. You take a set like Evolving Skies. You take a set like Cosmic Eclipse. There are so many great pulls in the set that really carry it. And of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that the value is going to show a true correlation, but there's a lot of excitement to the pulling of certain cards, which is what makes it a set that's enjoyable to open for a lot of people, especially long term, as you see kind of the scarcity of that set really begin to take place as more and more people open it, because they really, really do enjoy opening that set in and of itself. Then talking about prospect number 4, art design. Art design is another thing as well, and this is going to typically retain less value. It's more of kind of like an add-on, of course. When talking about certain eras such as tag team obviously performed better than the general GX Rainbow because people love the tag team designs, and so it really gave a boost. The only time you can take an argument and say, okay, where a specific art design really kind of shined light on making a set more valuable is standalone ones such as Phantom Forces, because it had that Silver Dialga. That Silver Dialga was a card that was really one for its time, and there's a reason why that Silver Dialga carries it, because there's no other card like it in regards to silver cards in and of themselves. The last but not least pick is print run. Print run is going to play an absolute major factor in regards to if an item is going to perform really, really strong. And maybe I shouldn't have ordered it as number 5, and I should have, kind of bumped it up as number, 3, number 4. But I guess the reason why, personally speaking, I should say print run is because you can have certain sets that, will not perform extremely strong in the short term because they were not super desirable at the time. But then you look at the long-term growth of the set, and you say to yourself, okay, wow, you take a look at like tag team sets such as Team Up performed absolutely amazingly, not only because long term it's a very desirable set, but it's also one of those sets that didn't have an extremely high print run, and it plays a major factor. So I would say I would swap it around. I'd say it's number 3, and then take the other 2 and kind of put them at 4th and 5th. But I would say 3rd, probably most important, arguably even 2nd most important, is print run, because print run is obviously going to be an attainment to scarcity in regards to determining if a set is going to perform well. So you have a set that is a very older set. It's a very scarce set. It's got, really good cards. It's got amazing artwork. And then on top of that as well, it has a lot of great pulls. I mean, that's a set that's just going to knock it out of the park long term. But those are my kind of 5, main things when determining what makes a set perform really well over time compared to others. And those are kind of the main 5 things you really want to look for those people that are saying to themselves, okay, why do I think, let's say, hypothetically, Fusion Strike could perform better than a set such as, Chilling Reign? It does have that Mew, it does have that Gengar, it does have that Espeon, even though a lot of people look at that set as not having a bunch of high hitters. And Chilling Reign has a decent variation. It has a Snorlax, it has a Blaziken, which is a cool card, and it has, some of the new Galarian birds. And you can say pull rates will play a factor, but historically speaking, pull rates haven't really played a factor But I think there's an argument to be made, personally speaking, even though I enjoy Chilling Reign more, that Fusion Strike will perform better for that reason. And so that's kind of just bringing it in an example to the argument of why we're looking at these things, because we want to make these predictions for which Sword and Shield sets that might not be performing the best right now or are on a really good sale, you can pick up right now and see it perform better long term than some of these other sets that are cheap at around the same price point. But as far as it goes, we've been going for almost 40 minutes now. I apologize for taking so long, but that is all I have for today's video. As always, make sure to leave a like, comment down below, and be subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you are wanting to enter into our weekly giveaways, you can enter in 3 times, since you can comment and like on each video. And then we have 3 winners. So 3 ways to enter, 3 ways to win, which makes you just have a really high chance of winning, 8 Brilliant Star booster packs, which will of course turn into 12 once we have 2,500 subs on the channel. But as far as it goes, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Until then, I will see you guys on Wednesday. Peace.